Good afternoon. I hope everybody's having a nice weekend. Jimmy here in Chicago, enjoying all this good college football. Looking forward to the Florida State Miami Hurricanes coming up, and obviously we got the World Series. I don't know if you guys watched the World Series last night, but it was an amazing game. Pretty much a one-run game. Yankees were up 3-2 at the bottom of the 10th, and then the Dodgers hit a grand slam walk-off and won the game. So obviously all that momentum goes to the Dodgers. Game 2 tonight. I'm rooting for the Yankees. But I wanted to drop a short story tonight. We're going to talk about some of the places that a lot of these wise guys, mob guys, Chicago outfit guys and associates, a lot of places where these guys used to like to meet, right? It's always interesting to me, all the unique and creative meeting places that these guys chose to, talk about potential scores, schemes, even planning murders. So let's get into it. I appreciate your support. If you guys have any comments, please enter the comments, engage into the chat room. If you like my Chicago mob trial stories, please hit the like button, subscribe, share with your friends. I've got some nice photos in the back available. You can get these framed. You can get them unframed. Also, while we're waiting for some more people to join the chat, as most of you know, I got some merch. Little Al Capone, his brother Ralphie Bottles Capone. I've got Lumpy, Joey the Clown shirts, the Last Supper photo shirts, short sleeve, long sleeve. Got the Sam Carlisi photo. Also got the Wild Bunch. Alderman Fred Rohde. And his slogan, vote for me and nobody gets hurt. Let's check out some of the comments. Yeah, church, right? What a great place to meet. I don't think even the feds would suspect wise guys or gangsters meeting at church. How you doing, Mary? Hope you're doing well. Good afternoon, Sari. Vincent, all the way from Boston. How are you, man? Hope you're doing well. Thanks for tuning in. Yeah. What's the name of it, Dave? Yeah. Another restaurant on Harlem Avenue, probably right there in Elmwood Park. Bambi Palermo, what's going on? Hope everybody's doing well, man. All right, let's get into it. First, we're going to talk about, the first guy we're going to talk about is not a mob guy. He's more of a racketeer. We'll call him a white-collar criminal. Ricky, what's going on? All the way from the UK. Hopefully you'll get a chance to visit our great city of Chicago. Thanks for tuning in, Ricky. Appreciate it, man. I've never been to the UK. That's definitely on my bucket list. Now, as I mentioned before, the vast majority of my stories are all about the 25, 30 major federal trials that I went to. Uh-oh, I might have to block this fool. Yep. There you go. Just like that, I blocked that asshole. So, as I mentioned, unfortunately for me, there's really not too many major mob trials left, right? Most of these guys are all locked up, passed away, or been killed. The real outfit guys, anyways. But if there ever is another mob trial, I'll definitely be there, and you guys can join me if you want. Keep in mind, these trials, whether it's a federal trial or a state trial, are open to the public. Anybody can go. And this week, you had a very powerful man in Chicago. His trial opening statements were last week. You had Michael Madigan. This is one of the most powerful men in the city of Chicago. They got him and his best friend on 23 federal indictments: racketeering, conspiracy, bribery, and wire fraud. And behind Mike Madigan there is a high-profile defense attorney, Tom Breen. I've seen Tom Breen many times in court. He attended the Mean Gene trial. Those were a couple guys in Elmwood Park. And then he also represented little Jimmy Marcello at the Family Secrets trial. But this is one of the best defense attorneys money can buy right here, Tom Breen. And a place that Michael Madigan hangs out till this day, and a place where he has his meetings, is Bruno's. Bruno's is right there in the Pilsen area, right there on 26th and Oakley, a block east of Western. This is one of my favorite places. I've seen Michael Madigan here probably 6-7 times, but this is one of his favorite meeting places. It's a small neighborhood mom and pop type restaurant. It's never really crowded, so nobody bothers him. Let's read some the comments really quick here. Hey, yeah, guilty, absolutely. Mike Madigan, there's no way in hell he's going to beat the government. His good buddy Alderman Ed Burke was just convicted. I went to his trial as well. I think he got 2 years and had to pay what was it? I forget, several $1 million in restitution. But what I would say with some of these high profile white collar criminals is I don't really believe in locking them up for life. What I would do is maybe give them a little bit of time in jail just to give them a taste what it's like to lose their freedom. But I would hit them in their pocketbook. I would give them their freedom, but basically take everything else. That would be my punishment. What's going on, man? Well, it's that old saying, you don't want to really shit where you eat. I live in the mother heartland of where the C notes are, so I got to be very careful. But eventually, I'll dedicate a show to the C notes. A very interesting group of young street gang in Chicago, which is kind of like the farm team of the Chicago outfit. Mike Madigan, I'll probably go to this trial in early November because I want to see the government's star witness, Danny Solis. He's their mole. He's their rat. He actually wore a wire on Alderman Ed Burke, testified against Ed Burke, and he's the government's star witness. He wore a wire against Mike Madigan's right-hand man, the other co-defendant. So it'll be interesting to see another good friend rat out a good friend, the guy he made millions of dollars with. But I'll keep you tuned on the Mike Madigan trial. But a trial like this is kind of boring. Nothing compares to the good old mob trials. Now, another restaurant where a lot of the mob guys, I mean heavyweights in Chicago outfit, bosses, enforcers, associates, men from the 26th Street crew, guys from the Taylor Street crew, all met at Counselor's Row. Counselor's Row was a restaurant right across the street from City Hall. As we all know, that's where the powerful First Ward men gathered, guys like Pat Marcy, Alderman Fred Rohde, judges, lawyers, policemen, mob guys. Everybody met at Counselor's Row, and the feds actually bugged a booth. They put a little bug in the booth trying to pick up conversations of these guys talking about some of the crimes, some of the bribery, and some of the schemes they had going on. Eventually, a busboy found the bug. It made big news, and all hell started to break loose. And then we all know that corrupt lawyer, bagman Bob Cooley, he wore a wire, flipped, cooperated against the entire First Ward, And that devastated the Chicago outfit because they lost all their power. But Counselor Row was a headquarters for the First Ward aldermen and a lot of mob guys. Yeah, absolutely. I've seen some of the best criminal defense attorneys in Chicago. I've seen some of the worst. And more times than not, the prosecution lawyers are a lot more polished, prepared, professional. But like Damien Sharonis told me, Jimmy, they have all the evidence. It's kind of hard to represent a guy like Frank Calabrese when all the evidence is against your client. But yeah, absolutely, especially in the Dirksen Federal Building, I think they have even a higher percentage than that, 97, 98% conviction rate. Some of the best prosecutors in the country. Chicago is not like LA. Look at LA, the Menendez brothers. They're seriously thinking about releasing these guys. O.J. Simpson, he was found not guilty. Rob Blake kills his wife outside one of his favorite Italian restaurants. He's found not guilty. But in Chicago and Illinois, it doesn't work like that. I agree 100%, Buster. The government has a 97, 98%. You're better off taking a plea. What's going on, Nick? Hope you're doing well. Nick Geo, I just did a little story on Nick Geo. He was a co-defendant, as we all know, the Gus Alex trial. He could have easily have flipped against Mario Ranone, Gus Alex, James Lavelli, but he did his time like a man, and he's still in prison today. Hopefully he will get released one day. But there's really not a whole lot of information on Nick Geo. But as we all know, he was convicted for killing a very popular hairstylist. But that hairstylist was connected. All right, let's get back into it here. Hope you guys are doing well. Now, here's Gus Alex, right? Here's him walking into the Dirksen Federal Building. This was the very first trial I ever went to, and ever since this, I was hooked. They charged Gus Alex with receiving kickbacks from a very violent extortion crew that Lenny Patrick was running, and Lenny Patrick wore a wire and testified against Gus Alex that they would meet. One of the places they would meet was at Northwestern Memorial Hospital downtown. They would actually use some of the doctors as couriers, not only to deliver messages, but to deliver brown paper bags of cash. The government was able to prove that Gus Alex was receiving cash payments, kickbacks from Lenny Patrick's violent extortion crew. They literally made a deal with the devil, the guy like Lenny Patrick, to go after Gus Alex. But Lenny Patrick testified that monthly, sometimes every other week, they would meet, and Lenny Patrick would give Gus Alex anywhere from $1,500 to $30,000 cash on the kickback scheme. Another place that Lenny Patrick and Gus Alex met was at the infamous Hamburger Hamlet. This was a bar restaurant right there on Rush Street. And I was very fortunate to be able to go to this place probably back in the late 80s. But this was somewhat of a staple, along with several other restaurant and bars right there in the Viagra Triangle, what we used to call Rush Street. But at the Gus Alex trial, this is a place that Gus Alex and Lenny Patrick would meet to exchange cash, kickbacks from the extortion crew. Another place that Lenny Patrick and Gus Alex would meet is Marshall Fields, right there on State Street. You can imagine it's packed with the public, very easy place to meet. Nobody would recognize them. Two old men having a cup of coffee at Marshall Fields. Let's read some more comments. Yep, at the hospital. I thought that was pretty creative. And actually, they would use the doctors as conduits. Now here, during the Mike Sarno trial, that was Mike, the large guy Sarno, along with co-defendants outlaw motorcycle gang member Mark Polchman, father and son Samuel Anthony Volpendenzo, and the other guy, we'll call him the Polish guy. They were all running a multi-million-dollar video poker gambling machine operation. They had a sophisticated burglary crew. And they would all meet here, right there on Roosevelt and Cicero. The place is still open today, but under different owners. It's called Goldberg Jewelers. That was a front for the crew. The government alleged that not only would they meet there and plan potential scores, but this is where they would fleece a lot of stolen goods. But what Mr. Polchman and Mike Sarno did not know is that 2 female FBI agents were part of an investigative crew, along with a bodybuilder, undercover cop that got in tight with Mark Polchman, and the whole crew was under surveillance, and they eventually got busted. Mike Sarno was received, I think, 25 years in prison. They felt that he was the leader of the crew. I disagree with that. And then Mark Polchman ended up getting 60 years. 60 years, man. Just think about that. There were no murders. There was no drugs, no guns. Eventually got it reduced to 30 with time served. Hopefully, Mark Polchman can come home to his family within 10 years. Same with Mike Sarno. Mike Sarno has suffered enough. Most of the evidence against Mike Sarno was against the co-defendants. But I bring this up, Goldberg Jewelers, because this is a place where large Mark Polchman and other guys would meet. The Loon Cafe. Yes, I forgot to mention that. That's one of several mobbed up Italian restaurants that outfit guys used to meet at. And I remember Chuck Gotti did a pretty good investigative reporting where No One Knows the Franzo, his brother Pete, his other brother, the younger brother, and Marco D'Amico and others would all meet weekly or bi-weekly at the Luna Cafe. I've never been there, but I remember taking the train past there. But that's where a lot of the Elmwood Park crew guys used to hang out. Thanks for bringing that up, Dave. And as I mentioned, here's a picture of a young Mike Sarno. And I think the guy with the hat on facing the camera, I think that's a picture of a young Joe the Builder, Joe Andriacchi. Both of them were made members and heavyweights in the Chicago outfit. Andriacchi just passed away of old age, lived to be his 80s. Mike Sarno, as I just mentioned, was brought up through Bobby Salerno, and he was convicted. The government believed that he was the leader of the crew, and he was one of the men that gave the green light to bomb a Berwyn video poker competitor. But I show up this photo because, as I mentioned, Sarno and Mark Polchman, they used to like to meet at Goldberg Jewelers. Another nonchalant, interesting place a lot of wise guys would meet, usually for coffee, is Dunkin' Donuts or McDonald's, right? Let's read some comments here really quick. Gene's Deli was a big-time hangout spot for wise guys and associates right there in Elmwood Park. I'm not sure if it's still there anymore, TC. I've been there a few times myself, and I remember you could just get that vibe anytime you walked in there. You always saw 2 or 3 associates, outfit guys, or wannabes all hanging out there. But yeah, great spot. What's up, Nikki? I got you, Nikki. Yes. Appreciate it, man. You guys got any questions, any comments? Now here, speaking of McDonald's, I believe this is the McDonald's near Oak Brook. This was a photo that the government showed in evidence at the Family Seekers trial. And according to the prosecution, according to John Scully and Mitch Mars, this was the initial planning of phase 2 of the Spilotro murders. Now, on the far left, that handsome gentleman, you got boss of Chicago outfit, Joe Nagol, Joe Ferriola, and then another boss of Chicago outfit with the white hat, Sam Wings Carlisi, with his back to us. And then in front, you got little Jimmy Marcello with the sunglasses. And then to his left, you got Rocky Infelice. Now, according to the government, according to Nick Calabrese, all 4 of these men took part in the brutal murders of the Spilotro brothers. Nick Calabrese said that out of the corner of his eye, he thought he saw Rocky Infelice. But the government or the defense attorney sprung up and said, there's no way Rocky was there. And Nick Calabrese is lying. You can't believe him because Rocky was under surveillance at a different location. There's no way Rocky and Felice could be at 2 locations at once. So that was some reasonable doubt there in Nick's testimony. However, I personally believe that Rocky and Felice was there. I think he wanted to be there to personally get his licks and kicks in. Maybe he was able to dodge or elude the surveillance. But this is a pre-meeting before the Spilotros were killed, according to the government, and they met at a local McDonald's parking lot. Another meeting, according to the government, to discuss the Spilotro murder, phase 2, was in another McDonald's parking lot. You got Jimmy Marcello there on the left, Sam Carlisi with the members only jacket, and then Louis the Mooch, Louis Ebele. As we all know, according to Nick Calabrese, when he greeted Michael Spilotro, shook his hand, he tackled him, grabbed him by his ankles, and Nick Calabrese said that Louis the Mooch, this man right here with the striped shirt on, that he was the one that threw a rope around Michael's neck and strangled him. Michael didn't put up much of a fight. A small .22 caliber gun fell out of his pants. No Nose DeFranzo picked up the gun, unloaded it, and then wiped a smudge of blood off the wall. According to Nick Calabrese, Sam Carlisi was one of the men that brutally stomped and beat Tony Spilotro to death. What do you guys think? Do you believe Nick Calabrese's testimony? I'm going to read some transcripts to you shortly. Yeah, absolutely, Emmett. Now, keep in mind, Nick Calabrese was talking about the Spilotro murders in 2007, right? The indictment came down in 2005. He started cooperating in the early 2000s. But the Spilotro murders were way back in the mid-'80s. So it's kind of hard for him to remember every detail. But he named all the heavyweights that were present. He did say there was a couple guys there he did not know or did not recognize. And again, out of the corner of his eye, he thought he saw Rocky and Felice. And that was a prime opportunity for the defense to raise hell and say that Rocky was under surveillance elsewhere. But I agree with you, Emmett. There's no way in hell Rocky and Felice would have missed that. What do you guys think? I love it, TC. Yeah, I mean, there's so many restaurants, cafes, bars that these wise guys, they either knew the owners or were in partners with them, but they definitely would socialize and meet privately a lot of these restaurants and bars. I've never been to this place, though. This is a legendary spot where Tony Arcardo, Iupa, Jack Cerrone, Giancano, all the heavyweights used to hang out. All right, let's see here. What else we got? Now, another meeting place, more of a stash house, was Ronnie Jarrett's mother-in-law's house right there on South Low Street in Bridgeport, right there by White Sox Park, not far from Chinatown, and actually not far from Mayor Daley. But the Ronnie Jarrett's mother-in-law's house was talked about quite a bit at the Family Seekers trial. This is one of the houses, warehouses, if you will, where they would work on their work cars. They would count cash. They would store jewelry. They would modify guns. They would make explosives. If Ronnie Jarrett's mother-in-law had any idea what her son-in-law and his friends were up to, woman probably would have had a heart attack. But this was some of the headquarters of Frank Calabrese and some of the 26th Street Crew's members. This was Ronnie Jarrett's mother-in-law's garage where they would meet and plan a lot of their scores. Speaking of Ronnie Jarrett, as we all know, this man did a lot of time in prison, pretty much a career burglar, a stand-up guy, did a lot of heavy work with the Calabrese brothers. He was Angelo Petria's driver. That shows you how trusted he was by Angelo the Bull. And he had issues with Johnny Apes, as we all know. And some people think there was some money missing. Some people think it was a power struggle. But eventually Johnny Apes had enough. And he had, according to the government, Tough Tony Calabrese pulled up in a moving van wearing a ski mask, a Chicago Bears jacket, and shot and killed Ronnie Jarrett right across the street from his house, right there in Bridgeport. And then word got back to Frank Calabrese when he was in prison. Somebody, I forget who, sent him a letter talking in code that Ronnie Jarrett was killed. Junior testified that his father had no idea and was shocked and saddened that his good friend, partner in crime, was killed, Ronnie Jarrett. I don't think Anthony Calabrese was ever convicted of the murder, but he was the prime suspect. But right there, I go past this place quite a bit, right there in Low Street, Ronnie Jarrett, mother-in-law's garage. This is where the 26th Street Crew would meet and plan a lot of their schemes. Let's read. You guys still with me here? Yeah, that's right. I remember they had a unmarked police car parked in front of Daly's house 24/7. But that's one interesting thing about Bridgeport is you had a lot of the powerful Irish that lived there, right? You had old man Mayor Daley, his son Richie Daley. You had a lot of Chicago policemen, captains, sergeants. You had a lot of politicians. Basically, you had the Irish gang living in Bridgeport. And then you also had a lot of the Italian Chicago outfit guys like the Rodi family, the Caruso family. Obviously, Angelo Petria had a fortress there. You had the club. So you had the Italian outfit living right next to the powerful Irish guys, all living there in Bridgeport. Some of them still live there today. Great neighborhood right there in by White Sox Park. Yeah. All right, I got some more for you here. Now, this was interesting. Venture parking lot, Venture store, right? This today was a very popular store, similar to like a Target or a Walmart today. And according to Nick Calabrese's testimony, at first, Nick said that John Feccarata and brother Jimmy LaPetria met him at the Venture store and dropped him off at the house in Bensonville where the Spilotro brothers were killed. Then, and he said Jimmy Marcello was not there. That's what Nick Calabrese said. Then, a month later, he said he couldn't remember if little Jimmy Marcello was there at the Venture store. Then 3 months later, he told the government that Jimmy Marcello picked up him, John Feccarata, and brother Jimmy LaPetria at the Venture store, picked him up in the parking lot, and he said he was in a real fancy van, and that it was little Jimmy that dropped the three of them off at the house in Bensonville where the brothers were killed. So right there, that's a couple little white lies in proof that Nick Calabrese flip-flopped a little bit. At first, he said Jimmy Marcello was not present. A couple months later, he said he wasn't sure. And then 3 months later, he placed them there. You think that's reasonable doubt? What do you guys think? As we all know, what happened to Spilotro brothers, they were lured to that house, beaten and stomped to death, and then a separate crew, most guys from the Chicago Heights crew, botched the burial. Those bodies were supposed to never be found. But as we all know, once they found the bodies, this made national news. It was an embarrassment to Chicago outfit, and a lot of guys started to get clipped because of the botched burial. Read some more comments. Paulie, what's going on, bro? Good to see you, man. Oh, this guy, this Tommy Day guy. I watched a couple of his interviews. You know, I don't know how that guy is still alive. I can't believe he's not locked up or that they never clipped him. But a lot of his stories are just flat out bullshit. You guys are, I think people are starting to see that. But he's so lucky that that scumbag cop, that Steve Mendel, he's so lucky that he never got a hold of him, because that guy, along with his buddy Gary, another Chicago corrupt cop, they were literally torturing guys, getting them to turn over their property, business, and cash to them. They had literally a torture club with all kinds of torture devices they called Club Med. Actually went to Steve Mandel's trial. But this guy, Tommy Day, he's very lucky. Mandel or any of the Outfits guys never got a hold of him. But I agree, Paulie. A lot of his bullshits are bullshit. True. That's true. I doubt he's ever even seen Angelo the Bull. Yeah, John Mendel and his partner in crime, I think his name was Gary, another corrupt Chicago cop. Absolutely, they were torturing people, but he says that they were putting putting these guys in meat grinders while they were alive. I don't believe that at all. But there was definitely some disbarment and some chopping there. So yeah, Mendel and his partner were definitely sick, evil bastards, and rotting away in prison as we speak. I think some of that chopping and grinding was a little exaggerated, but these guys were sick bastards, man. Yeah, can you imagine, Bobby? That was their goal. That was part of the plan, right? To bury those bodies where they'll never be found. Keep in mind, Michael Spilotro, or Tony Spilotro, had several indictments over his head. And because he had the best attorney in the country, Oscar, he beat a lot of those cases. But eventually, one of them is going to stick. Tony Spilotro would have been better off going to prison. He would have avoided the brutal beatdown that he got. He probably would have came home as an older statesman and would have been the boss with a lot of money saved up. So he literally would have been better off going to prison. Let's read another one. Mario. Uh-oh. Yeah. Yeah, Bobby Cavone, man. Here's a guy did 15 plus years in prison because he would not roll. He would not cooperate. Several Chicago outfit guys and associates could have easily flipped. But they did time like men. Never cooperated, never ratted. Let's read some more here. Now, this is a good one. Probably one of the best places for mob guys to meet is at their lawyer's office, right? Because everything's supposed to be confidential. And here's a famous building not too far from the MCC prison downtown, 1 block away from the Dirksen Federal Building, not too far from Chicago Board of Trade, right there in the financial district. You got the Monodoc Building. This is where Joe Lopez and all your top defense attorneys' law offices are, and they meet with their clients here privately, discuss their cases, discuss the trial, and then they can literally walk across the street to go to court, to go to work. But this is one of several places, a lot of outfit guys, associates, especially the ones that fly under the radar, like to meet at their lawyers' offices. Now, here's a place that I used to go to back in the day in Countryside, a place called B&B. I think it's called Beef and Brandy. I don't think it's still there anymore, but this is during the Sam Carlisi trial that I went to. That was the second trial I went to in the early 1990s. There was a lot of talk where Sam Carlisi himself and some of his associates and guys in the Carlisi crew, this is where they would meet and talk shop at the B&B restaurant. Obviously, you got social clubs, right? Back in the day, there were social clubs up and down the Grand Avenue neighborhood, Taylor Street, Bridgeport, Elmwood Park, Cicero. There was probably 3, 4, 5 clubs in every neighborhood. Now, most of the clubs are shut down. There's a few active clubs. There's one right by my house, the main one right there in Grand and May. That's shut down. But there is 2 active clubs in Bridgeport that I know of. There might be a couple others. There's one on West Addison. There's one in Elmwood Park. So there's still a few social clubs, but there's really nothing illegal going on here. Most of this is, gambling, guys playing cards, busting each other's balls, talking about the news, and watching the girls go by. But social clubs back in the day was a great place for a lot of guys to meet and do some walk and talks. But keep in mind, some of the social clubs, some of the popular restaurants, places like La Scarola, Rosebud, Tiffany's, the FBI had surveillance on a lot of these places too. Yeah, exactly, Paulie. Very smart. Just like a lot of the mob guys, they have secret meetings with their lawyers that can't be wiretapped. If you go there in Bridgeport, I think it's Shields, you could still see the old club. It's the Italian American Social Club. Sometimes it's open to the public when they have fundraisers and barbecues. Sometimes the old guys will let you in to walk around. And then there's a private club right across the street from Angel the Bull's Fortress. So, yeah, a couple of those clubs are still in existence. There's a few other clubs, private clubs in Bridgeport as well. Great question. Yeah, I've seen Kurt in several times in court at the family secret trial. I never went up to him because I don't know him. I kind of felt sorry for him. And then recently, last summer, I seen him at the Taylor Street Fest. But he does not support what Junior did. In fact, till this day, he doesn't talk to his brother. Probably will never talk to him the rest of his life because Kurt will tell you Junior just didn't bring down his father, but he destroyed his own family and a lot of other outfit guys, families, and associates. He brought down a lot of people and destroyed a lot of lives. Junior, I'm talking about. And there's a couple really good interviews with Kurt Calabrese I highly recommend. One is with Joey Seifert. The other, I think, is with Michael Franchise. But great interviews, and I almost feel sorry for Kurt Calabrese. He took the brunt of the physical and verbal abuse by Frank Sr. But it was Junior that stole all that money, sold drugs, and decided to lock up his father for the rest of his life. But to answer your question, Kurt disagrees and does not support Junior at all. Absolutely, Paulie. Absolutely, I agree. Kurt also mentioned in one of his interviews that Nick Calabrese made some tapes before he died. So it'll be interesting to see, one, if that's true, and two, if they release those tapes. Okay, so let's get back to some more places these guys would like to meet. Obviously, restaurants, right? We talked about this, especially restaurants back in the day like La Scarola on Grand Avenue, Rosebud on Taylor Street, Jean's Deli, the B&B. I mean, there's hundreds of it, amazing Italian restaurants, a lot of restaurants in the Little Italy, up and down Grand Avenue, places like Bellinota, Tofano's off of Taylor Street, Bridgeport, Elmwood Park, Cicero. So this was probably a favorite meeting place where a lot of the restaurants, not only could they enjoy a delicious meal, but usually they knew the owners or they had a partnership in the restaurant. Reminds me of the place where little Tony Zizzo was last seen, Ambruzzo's in Melrose Park, right across the street from Danny's Deli. So yeah, restaurants were probably the most popular places a lot of these guys used to like to meet, as well as weddings, right? I remember one of the judges allowed Caruso Sr. and an associate of his to attend the same wedding, but they couldn't speak to each other. But obviously, especially some of these big Italian weddings, it's a great place for outfit guys who normally cannot be seen together. It's a great place for them to have their meetings and discuss their business. I remember one guy, an older gentleman I used to work for, he told me that he was somewhat of a collector for Joe Nagel, and he said that anytime a guy owed him money, he always liked to show up at the guy's wedding or at somebody's wedding because they knew they were usually in good spirits and had a lot of cash on them. But I thought that was kind of interesting to show up at the groom's wedding to collect, knowing it's a big payday for them. But weddings were a huge place for mob guys to meet. Let's read some comments. Tommy Stiggs, good to see you, man. Guys, if you're not following Tommy Stiggs, he has probably the best social club podcast. He supports Snuff and Skinny Joey Merlino, my favorite podcast. Thanks for tuning in, Tommy Stiggs. Look forward to hopefully catching you tonight, and go Yankees. Yeah, Michael Spilotro owned a restaurant right on the outskirts of the city of Chicago called Hoagie's. A lot of the outfit guys and associates all work there and used to hang out there, but he was also selling cocaine out of that place. So, Michael Spilotro was no angel. He was nothing like his brother. Probably did not deserve to get killed. But Michael Spilotro was definitely selling cocaine out of Hoagie's, and he could have got killed for that alone. As we all know, unlike some of the East Coast guys, Chicago outfit for the most part stayed away from drugs. And if you were found out selling drugs, you definitely had to pay the price. Yeah, definitely check out Tommy Stiggs. This guy's a stud, a gentleman. Absolutely, Tommy. I hope one day, if you're ever in Chicago, I'd love to show you around, take you out, show you our great city. And same thing next time I'm in New Jersey, man. Good to see you, bro. All right, we'll get back to the show. Let's see here. Weddings we talked about. I gotta pull this up from my good friend Mary here. Now, Mary took the words right out of my mouth. A great place for mob guys, associates to meet is in church, right? Who would suspect mob guys to meet privately, discreetly in church? As Mary says, you don't have to worry about wires. It's free. It's like a free fed zone. Great comment, Mary. This is Holy Name Cathedral right there in Chicago in state. I've been to several funerals here. Unfortunately, I went to Harry Carey's funeral. You all know Harry Carey from Chicago Cubs. They actually had his smudged up glasses on display, And many years ago, the Al Capone gang got in a machine gun shootout with the Bugs Moran gang, and there's bullet holes in the brick. You could actually walk up to the front of the Holy Name Cathedral and stick your finger in the bullet hole. But this was a favorite place where a lot of the mob guys used to meet at church. They could also say a prayer for some of their victims, more likely say a prayer for some of the sins they committed. So they can kind of kill two birds at one stone. And then sadly, believe it or not, funerals, wakes are a great place for mob guys to meet, talk privately, relay messages. You remember a lot of these, especially the heavyweights, the made guys and the close, dangerous associates, most of these guys were under surveillance, right? So they couldn't be seen together. Or if a guy was just sprung from prison, if he was seen with a member of organized crime or an associate or another felon, he could have his bond revoked. So these guys had to be very careful and fly very low under the radar anytime they met. But funerals was a great place to meet as well. And then this is interesting. I used to see this in my neighborhood, and I also seen it in the Taylor Street neighborhood. Rather than be on Front Street, a lot of these guys, believe it or not, would meet in the alleys. So rather than be on the main streets like Grand or Taylor or Halsted, they would meet on the side street, usually at nighttime, sometimes late at night. I remember a story I read on John Gotti would meet one of his captains, Nicky Carrazzo. They would meet like at 1:30, 2:30 in the morning. But this is interesting. It was always interesting to see wise guys talking business in the alleys of the streets of Chicago. Let's read some comments here. Yeah, absolutely, Buster. Wait, hang on. Wow, pretty creative. Yeah, pretty slick. You know, some of these guys are so smart, man. If they would have used some of their street smarts legitimately, they could have probably been, CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. And I love the way they talk in code, right? How they would talk in opposite genders. It's interesting in trial, in court, when they play the tapes. Sometimes it's kind of hard to understand the code, and usually the FBI has a dedicated agents that their job is nothing more than spend lots of hours breaking down the code. Wow, pretty interesting, right? Who would ever suspect New York wise guys walking around in African, Western, Indian neighborhoods, walking in clothing stores? I remember Joey Lombardo used to meet some of his cronies at Marshall Fields on State Street as well. God bless the clown. That's right, Emmett. The lady had a good catch. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. She's from the neighborhood. Yeah, client attorney privilege, right? Yeah, that's funny, right? Unfortunately, I don't go to too many weddings anymore. It's all funerals. Yeah, great place to meet, right? Church. Who's gonna question that? Tommy Stiggs. I'll be checking you out tonight, man. Hopefully you're going live. Tommy Stiggs does, he's consistent. He does one in the mornings. He also does one in the evenings. Definitely check it out, man. His show is growing, one of my favorite podcasters. Yeah, me neither. I don't think there's ever been a wiretap in church. Restaurants, bars, apartments, condos. Yeah, he was a real piece of shit, this guy. He claims to be so close with the skinny Joey Merlino, he ended up lying on the stand and ratting against him. But the government and the jury found him not credible. I think he was kind of kicked out of the WITSEC, and because of his lies, the jury did not believe the testimony, and Joey Merlino was acquitted. But this guy was a real piece of shit. That's what blows my mind. A lot of these mob guys, they hang out and associate with losers, whether they want to admit it or not. Gus Alex, he should have known better. Doing business with a career criminal scumbag like Lenny Patrick or the Rocky and Felice crew, making BJ Jahona a lieutenant, or the Sarno crew dealing with Mark Hale or Junior, right? I mean, these scumbags somehow get in tight with these mob guys. They earn their trust. Then they get pinched. They don't want to do any time in prison. It's a get out jail free card. And I believe most cases, not all, if it wasn't for the government's informants, they wouldn't have a case. If it wasn't for guys like BJ Jahota, Nick Calabrese, Bob Cooley, the government didn't have enough to convict. What do you guys think? Now back to the funerals, right? Great place for outfit guys to meet. Even though the major, anytime a major mob guy dies, obviously the government is there taking surveillance, taking down license plates. But I remember after the Family Secrets trial, I actually went to the Harry Ailman funeral. And I did not want to go. I went with a good friend of mine from WGN, Bob Ferguson. Bob is a Chicago outfit authority figure, if you will. He knows more about Chicago outfit than anybody I've met. I met with him at the Family Secrets trial. That's where I first met Bob Ferguson. But I haven't seen him well. I hope you're doing well, Bob. If you're alive and well, please reach out to me. But he talked me into going to Harry Ailman's funeral. I felt uncomfortable going there. But when I went there, I paid my respects. I said a prayer for Harry Ailman and his family. I also said a prayer for all Harry Ailman's victims. Now here's these two guys, right? Lefty Rosenthal, Tony Spilotro, right? Meeting in the middle of nowhere in the desert in Nevada. Great scene in the movie Casino. As we all know, the movie Casino was about the skim. It was about the Chicago outfit, the Kansas City mob, and a couple guys in Milwaukee were skimming 4 mobbed up hotel casinos. That money would be sent from Las Vegas to the mob bosses back home in the Midwest. They had a beautiful thing going. They had it all, just like the movie Casino: women, money, power. But they fucked it all up. Tony Spilotro was supposed to keep a low profile, keep his head down. He did the exact opposite, pissing off the bosses. But I want to read you a couple transcripts really quick. Yeah, gotta love the code words. The Calabrese crew would refer to it as a birthday party. Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, they follow around. The agents follow around these mob guys 24/7. I don't know how the hell they dealt with that, the stress and the pressure. But I want to read to you just a quick excerpt of some of Nick Calabrese's transcripts. We're going to talk about, he goes into great detail on who was present when the Spilotro brothers were killed. If you guys want, I could share the Nick Calabrese transcripts with you, no charge at all. I also have the Lenny Patrick's testimony as well. Let me see if I could share my screen with you. Bear with me here. Wait 1 second. Share my screen. Can you guys see my screen? Okay. Hopefully you can see the screen. I'm going to read it to you. This is Nick Calabrese on the stand. Probably one of the probably the biggest highlight at the Family Secrets trial when he talked about the brutal beatdown of Spilotro brothers. You can literally hear a pin drop. Prosecution asked, and what happened when you arrived? He's telling the ladies and gentlemen of the jury that Jimmy Marcello picked him, Feccarata, and Jimmy LaPetri up at the Venture parking lot and dropped them off at Towson, Bensonville. So question, what happened when you arrived there? Nick replied, we got out of the van and walked. The garage door was open. We walked into the garage and into the house. Now, who is the we? The prosecutor asked. Nick Calabrese replied, myself, Johnny Feccarata, and Jimmy LaPetri. Where was Jimmy Marcello? I don't know if he was behind us or not, but the van was still there. We walked into the house. And when we walked into the house, we made like a left turn. And then standing there was Johnny Bananas, John DeFranzo. So right there, Nick places John DeFranzo in the basement at the house. Meaning Johnny DeFranzo, Sam Carlisi, Jimmy LaPetri was going to stay there, and Joe Ferriola. What did you do when you got to the house? Shook their hands, said hello, and then when I got to Sam, he made some kind of a comment about my tan because I was in the sun. Prosecutor, this is Sam Carlisi. Nick replied, right. And also about money. He made a wisecrack about money. That sort of scared me. Why? Because I knew that Johnny Feccarata messed up a lot of the money on the trip. The money he was getting, he was using it for other things. Nick Calabrese is talking about Plan A when they were trying to kill the Spilotro brothers in Nevada. And do you know whether John Feccarata himself felt any discomfort on this trip? Well, Nick replied, we walked down the stairs. We went into a basement. Feccarata right away went into the bathroom. When he came out, he was in the bathroom quite a while. And I kept thinking something's wrong. When he came out, he was pale. I figure he thinks this is for him. Meaning Feccarata knew he was on thin ice with these guys. When he got to the house, he beelined it to the bathroom. He was in there a long time. When he came out, he was white as a ghost. Nick Calabrese testified that Feccarata thought they were going to kill him. No, it wasn't for him. Now, did you happen to have gloves on this occasion? Nick replied, yes. And how about the other people in the house? Nick replied, everybody had gloves. What occurred next? Now, as the prosecutor is taking Nick Calabrese to this testimony, you could hear a pin drop. Joey Lombardo, Frank Calabrese, Doyle, Jimmy Marcello were literally at their edge of their seats. This is probably the first time Joey Lombardo heard in detail what happened to his good friends. What occurred next? Did you see Jimmy Marcello enter the house this first time? No. We went down the basement. Like I said, Feccarata went into the bathroom. When I walked down the stairs on my left, there were two guys standing, and one of them was Louis the Mooch and Louis Marino. Do you know Louis the Mooch's last name? I believe Ebele. I can never pronounce it. And there was another Louis there, you said. Yeah, Louis Marino. And you just waited in the basement area? Nick replied, yes. There was another guy there that I didn't recognize that had glasses, and two other guys that I never seen before. So we were just sitting. We were just waiting. And what happened while you were waiting there? After a while, I don't know how long, it must have been a half hour or so, somebody says, here he comes, meaning Jimmy Marcello. Do you recognize the voice of the person who said, here he comes? Nick replied, no, I don't remember. But then what do you remember that occurred next? I remember hearing talking, the door, somebody coming in saying hello to everybody. Did you recognize any of the voices? No, I wasn't at the time. I'm wound up. I'm tense. I'm not really. I'm focused on what I'm about to do. Because Nick knows he's going to kill these guys, so he's getting tense. And so what was the next thing you remember? After a few minutes, Michael comes walking down the stairs, and as soon as he got down and turned, I walked up and said, how you doing, Mike? This is Michael Spilotro. Nick replied, yes, Michael Spilotro. And he walked over towards me. Louis Marino and Louis and the Mooch were there. As soon as that happened, this just happened all of a sudden. I dove and grabbed his legs. Then I noticed right away Louis the Mooch had a rope around his neck, strangled him. This is Michael. This is Michael. And what was going on with Tony Spilotro? All I heard, all I heard, sorry, guys. All I heard was that when he came down, he said, can I say a prayer? Meaning Tony Spilotro knew the jig was up. He saw his brother Michael being strangled. He knew that was it. And then what happened? Nick Calabrese said he didn't hear any more. And we can pretty much surmise that the rest of the Chicago Outfit guys beat and stomped Tony Spilotro with their fists and their feet. They could have easily shot him in the head, but they brutally beat him down. Horrible way to die. Hang on here. Hopefully you guys were able to read that. I tried to share my screen with you and read some of the transcripts with you, but that was in detail, according to Nick Calabrese, how the Spilotros were lured to a house in Bensonville and brutally beaten and stomped to death. Do you guys believe Nick Calabrese when he placed men like Joe Nago, Sam Carlisi, Louis the Mooch, John No-Nos DeFranzo, Jimmy Marcello, Jimmy LaPetra? Do you believe they were all there? Do you believe Rocky and Felice was there? A lot of people don't believe that. They think Nick planted those people there to make his story bigger. What do you guys think? Let's read some comments. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they did, when you get that gut feeling. But if this is all true, right, the Spilotro brothers were good friends with Jimmy Marcello. They trusted him. The Spilotro, according to the government and Nick Calabrese and other testimony, it was the Spilotro, it was Marcello that set up the Spilotro brothers. And shortly after the botched burial, as we all know, John Theckerata was killed by his good friend, Nicky Calabrese, and his brother, Frank Calabrese and Johnny Apes were on the lookout. Yeah, right, Mario? I'm sure a couple guys there were shaking in their boots. Nick was one of them. Yeah, some people think that, but there were other guys that killed by the Chicago Outfit where there was a large group of guys present. For example, I think it was I did a story on Nicholas DeAndrea. It was Sam Carlisi was there, Jimmy Marcello, Calabrese, and other guys. So there's been Angelo LaPetra. There's been times where some of the a group of heavyweights of the Outfit all took part in killing these guys. So it's happened before. I know it sounds crazy, but it's definitely happened, man. That's why the Chicago Outfit was just as powerful, just as vicious as any crew in Boston, New York, Philly. They controlled everything west of the Mississippi. Yeah, that was probably the most suspenseful testimony. That was definitely one of the highlights. Probably the funniest testimony, though, had to be when Joey the Clown testified. Yeah, right? Well, according to Junior, he knows who killed Hoffa. He knows who killed Sam Giancana. Yeah, great question. It didn't last that long. It went by pretty quick. And then afterwards, Joe Nagel invited Nick Calabrese and John Theckerata out to dinner, out to a diner. They had coffee, and Ferriola told them to cut up their gloves into little pieces because the feds can find fingerprints there. But Ferriola didn't know about DNA evidence back in the day. But another YouTube guy, I don't want to mention his name, he claims Frankie Schweich, Frankie the German, was there, in Bensonville and told them all about it. But Nick Calabrese, who knew Frank Schweiss, never mentioned Frankie Schweiss being at the house in Bensonville. When they did the autopsy of the brothers, there was no drugs found in their system, but there was alcohol. So it's possible they could have had a couple drinks before they were taken down and beaten to death. We'll never know. Yeah, that's why, Nick's testimony against Jimmy Marcello, he flip-flopped a little bit. At first, he said he wasn't there. Then he said he wasn't sure. Then 3 months later, he placed him there. He might have been trying to stick up for Jimmy because Jimmy was giving Nick Calabrese's wife thousands of dollars a month while he was locked up. Jimmy Marcello is the only one that took care of Nick Calabrese's family while he was away. That's right, Mario. It was. Anybody in Vegas, any locals will say Vegas was much better when the mob ran it. Oh, yeah, Chicago Outfit had a lot of influence in the Chicago Police Department. The mob guys pretty much controlled the Chicago Police Department. Lenny Patrick had mob guys that did work for him. Rocky and Felice, Gus Alex. I mean, a lot of mobbed up cop. Bill Hanhart. Yeah, absolutely, Mario. Without these rats, there wouldn't be no trials. I got a photo I'm going to show you. Let's see if I can find it. Now, we always talk about, right? We're talking about meetings, right? Places these guys would like to meet, low key. In my neighborhood, I've seen this. They would meet in alleys, off the front street. Funerals, churches is probably my favorite spot. Weddings, mob guys like to meet at. All kinds of bars, restaurants, social clubs. B&B and Countryside, Carlisi crew used to meet at. Parking lots, McDonald's, right? Coffee at Dunkin' Donuts, Goldberg Jewelers, Marshall Fields. This is where Joe Lombardo would meet guys. This is where Gus Alex and Lenny Patrick would meet. And probably my favorite, though, is the hospital. A little bit of a recap. But you better be careful when you're meeting somebody because some of these guys are wired up. Guys like Junior, guys like BJ Jehoda, lowlifes like Mark Hale, Bob Cooley. It's one thing to dry snitch, right? But to wear a wire and incriminate somebody and trap them, that should not be allowed into court. That should not be allowed into evidence. It's one of the worst things in the world. Junior, BJ Jehoda, Mark Hale, and these other scumbag lowlifes are so lucky they didn't get caught with that wire on him. Now, aside, this is off the subject, but here's a recent photo of a top enforcer in the outfit, Mario the Arm Ranon. I've seen this guy a few times in court at the Gus Alex trial and also many years later at a gun trial. He got 15 years in prison, never ratted, never rolled. He's out of jail now, and he's trying to get off supervised release so he could travel the world. But here's Mario Ranon, a very heavyweight enforcer in the Chicago outfit, one of the few guys, one of the last of the Mohicans. Mario Ranon did a lot of time in jail, never ratted, never rolled, a stand-up guy, and hopefully he's behaving himself. Again, I got 8x10 photos. If you guys are interested, I've got shirts, Got the Wild Bunch shirt, Last Supper, Carlisi, Alderman Rhodey. I do tours too, no charge for the tours. Grand Avenue, Taylor Street, Bridgeport. If you want transcripts, let me know. If you guys like my Chicago mob trials, hit the like button, subscribe, share with your friends. Let's read a couple more comments. Absolutely, Polly. Yeah, Mario the arm, because when he put his arm on you, Mario, he didn't just threaten you, he threatened your whole family. Pretty scary guy. Yeah. That's probably another great place, right, to meet. I'm sure airports, different cities, right? Probably all kinds of places. Ah, interesting. I forgot to mention that. Yeah, I forgot it was an outfit guy that owned that house and they tore it down. My friend actually tried to go to that house after the family secret trial to get a peek inside, but the owners wouldn't allow it. Yeah, great movie Casino. They got that movie right on, man. I know Frankie Collada takes a lot of credit. Yeah, the German man. What a nasty human being. He was one of the defendants at the family secrets trial, but he was too sick to stand trial. But he was eventually convicted. I remember seeing him during sentencing, though. He was yelling at the prosecutor, who was an Arabic guy. Same prosecutor, Bajit. He wears the turban and everything. Pretty sharp guy. He prosecuted Mike Sarno, Mark Polchman. And he's also prosecuting Michael Madigan. But that's it, man. That's just a short little story on all these interesting places that these guys would like to meet. Stay tuned, man. Keep in touch. I'm going to give you my email if you guys want to shoot me an email, man. All right, guys, you have a good weekend. Everybody stay safe. And for you haters out there, put out the cigarette and take the old lady to Olive Garden, please, man. Happy life, happy wife. Ciao, guys.